Hello class 11. Today we are going to do lesson number 7, economic growth and development. This is with regard to the Indian as well as Chinese economies, and the book that we are using is Frank ISC Economics for class 11. Alright students, when we study this lesson we are going to see very important points, and the important thing that we are going to study about is economic growth. And in economic growth you will study about the national income as well as the per capita income, and under them you will study about the gross domestic product and gross national product, which will be explained further in the video in detail. Also you will study about economic development, and you will study the traditional as well as the modern view towards economic development, and you will in the end study about a difference between growth and development. Okay, and along with that you will also see the different indicators for Indian and Chinese economies over the years in terms of their growth and development. Alright students, let's get into the meaning of economic growth. So first we are going to see the meaning of economic growth. What is economic growth? Okay, so let's look into the meaning. Basically, economic growth is a process where the real per capita income of a country increases over a long period of time. That means through this definition we come to know three important things. First thing that we come to know is that the focus of this definition is on the increase of the per capita income. Okay, and when we are talking about per capita income, we come to know that the first thing is national income. So what is national income? Basically, national income is the value of all final goods and services which are produced in a country. So in the entire country, whatever goods and services are being produced, the entire value of it will be considered to be the national income. And national income is expressed in two forms. Okay, one is GDP and the other is GNP. So GDP stands for gross domestic product and GNP stands for gross national product. Okay, so let's look into the meanings of both of these. So the first one is, what is gross domestic product? Okay, like I already told, national income is expressed in two forms. One is GDP, the other is GNP, and we need to know their meanings. So first is GDP. Basically, GDP is the value of all final goods and services. By final goods and services we mean the goods and services which ultimately reach to the consumers. Okay, so those final goods and services, the value of such goods and services which is produced in a year in the domestic territory of a country. Domestic territory would mean within the country. Okay, so whatever value of these goods and services is within the country in a particular year, that will be gross domestic product. On the other hand, we have to see what is gross national product, that is GNP. So GNP is actually the value again of all the final goods and services which are produced in a year, of course, but it is produced by the normal residents of a country. Okay, so when normal residents of a country in a country during a year are producing goods and services will be called gross national product. So basically GNP is different from GDP. The difference between both of them is about the income received from abroad. Okay, that means I'll just give you an example. If for example in India, let's say a few number of foreign banks and business enterprises, they are producing goods and services. Now this will give rise to income which is received by foreigners, right? That means in the domestic territory, whatever foreigners are there, whoever are there, they are going to give money. So that means we are going to, in India we are going to receive that money. On the other hand, if we see some Indian enterprises which are located abroad or can be in India also, but they are working abroad as well, those will that will give rise to income which Indian nationals will receive from abroad. Okay, so one is that in the domestic territory of India we are receiving income from the foreigners, and one is that we are receiving income from Indian enterprises which are either settled abroad or they work abroad. Okay, so this is the difference between GDP and GNP. Another thing that we have to know is per capita income. What is per capita income? So basically per capita income is an average income. Okay, it is an average income of the people of a country in a particular year. So if let's say in 2020, whatever the average income of all the people of our country is, that will be considered to be the per capita income. Okay, and there is a little formula for per capita income, which is per capita income is equals to national income of a country, or we can say GNP or GDP of a country, divided by the population of a country. Okay, so whatever entire value of the final goods and services of a country is, that will be divided by the number of people in a country. That means the population of a country. So this is per capita income. So basically the first thing that we already saw was about how in this definition of economic growth, we see that national income and per capita income, they play a great role. Okay, and basically what question arises is that which of the two national income aggregates should be taken as the indicator for economic growth. That means what should we consider? Should we consider national income, that is GDP or GNP, or should we consider per capita income? So it is actually by economists, it is quite believed that the main core of economic growth is actually the increase in per capita income. So basically a mere rise in GDP or GNP is not considered as economic growth. But what is considered as economic growth will be increase or rise in the per capita income of a country. Okay, alright. Now from the viewpoint of economic growth, what is actually important is not simply an increase in the economy's national income, but increase in income which is actually corrected for population change. That means we're talking about per capita income. So what is important over here is not just the national income, but it is from the point of view of per capita income. Second thing that we see in this definition is that when we are defining economic growth, there is a stress on the long term period of time. Okay, that means we are talking about long period, because what is significant for economic growth is that per capita income must be prolonged. That means it must be increased, or in other words we can say that the rise in per capita income should continue over a long period of time. Okay, so when we can say that if a short period increment is there in the per capita income, it cannot be considered as economic growth. And the third thing that we understand from this definition is that economic growth is considered to be a process. It is a process because it talks about a certain force, or we can say forces, which are interrelated with each other, that lead to economic growth. So basically we can say that economic growth, it not only involves, we can say not only involves output, but also it talks about greater efficiency of the inputs. Inputs would mean the technology, the advanced techniques that are being used. So efficiency of technology is also equally important. It's not just about the output, the final outcome that we see. It's also about the advanced techniques. So these are the three things that we come to know from the definition of economic growth. Now we are going to see what is economic development. Okay, so let's see what is economic development. Basically, economic development is considered to be multidimensional in nature. Therefore, economists have defined this economic development very differently, depending on or we can say emphasizing more upon output, distribution of income, poverty. All these things are considered in economic development. Now there are two point of views of people. We are going to see both the point of views. First is the traditional view and second is the new view, or we can say the new approach of the definition. The first one is the traditional sense, or we can say the traditional view of economic development. In the traditional sense, the economists said that economic development means a sustained increase in real per capita income. That means increase in real per capita income is normally taken as a measure to understand that there is economic development in a country. That means we are talking about the well-being of the people. In other words, we can also say that increase in per capita income means increase in the amounts of goods and services, which citizens are consuming. We can also say this. So when per capita income is increasing, we are considering per capita income as a measure to consider the overall well-being of our population. Okay? And the next meaning is the new view, or we can say in other words, the new concept of economic development. So the new concept says that economic development is a process where the real per capita income of a country, it increases over a long period of time, along with reduction in poverty, inequality and unemployment. So basically we can say that this is a very comprehensive concept. That means economic development is a comprehensive concept, and basically economic development includes things like increase in income, improvement in welfare, removal of poverty, reduction in income inequality, reduction in unemployment, along with removing illiteracy, diseases and reduction in death rate. These are all indicators or factors that help us to realize if a country is economically developed or not. It also includes, we can say it also includes changes in the output, or we can say it considers the changes in the composition of output, which is away from agriculture towards, we are talking about industrial and service sectors. Okay, so basically here we are talking about the acceleration in the economy, we are talking about the increase in the economy, we are also talking about the development, how to know there is development, when there is inclusion of increase in income, removal of poverty, removal of inequality, removal of unemployment and increase in welfare, improvement in literacy of the country, improvement in the other kinds of factors, like having a good overall well-being among the population of the country. So this can be considered to be as the new viewpoint of economic development. Now we are going to see some points that help us understand the difference between growth and development. So we are going to see growth versus development. Now the first thing is, growth is a narrow concept, whereas development is very comprehensive. And how we can say that? Actually, economic development involves something more than economic growth. And economic development is actually a broader concept as compared to economic growth. Economic development is a broader concept. Okay, we talk more about we consider more indicators to tell if a country is developed or not. But for economic growth, if we talk, there are just very little things like national income and per capita income that we are seeing. But in development, along with this, we also look into inequalities, poverty, unemployment. We try to settle these matters also. So therefore, development is a much more broader and comprehensive concept. Next is that growth refers to more output and development refers to structural changes as well. Okay. Now basically, economic growth, it refers to output, while like I just said that economic development refers to both output and the structural changes. So economic growth is only focusing upon the output, but development, it focuses on both of them. Okay. Next is, growth is something that involves increase in income, whereas economic development involves reduction in poverty and inequalities as well. So it's not that development does not see the income increase, but along with income increase, development also tries to reduce the ill effects in the economy. That means ill effects like removal of poverty, inequalities, unemployment. These are all factors that development tries to correct. Okay. So next point is, growth involves only economic indicators. So if we talk about economic growth, it is defined strictly in terms of economic indicators like income, whereas development, it involves not only economic indicators like income, but it also includes non-economic indicators like literacy, provision of housing, and health services. These are different, there can be more than this, but I'm just giving you few examples that development also includes. So development definitely includes an economic indicator, that is income. Of course it does. But along with that, it also includes the non-economic indicators like we just saw: literacy, housing facilities, education facility, health services. These are also examples. Next is that growth involves quantitative changes. Okay, it is a very quantitative concept. So on the other hand, growth involves qualitative changes also. So it's not that development is only taking qualitative, it is also taking quantity. Okay, so growth is completely a quantitative kind of a concept, whereas development, it involves qualitative changes as well. So in other words, we can say that economic growth is fully measurable because it's completely quantitative only. But economic development is not fully measurable. It's not that we can completely measure development. Okay, because see, growth is measurable because we are only talking about income. But development, we cannot count the housing facility, we cannot count the health services, we cannot count the educational services that we are providing, we cannot count the sanitational, we cannot measure that. We cannot measure the well-being of the people of a country. Right? Therefore, development includes both quantitative and qualitative changes. That is why it is said that economic development is not fully measurable, but growth is fully measurable. Next point is that growth relates to problems of developed countries, whereas development relates to problems which are faced by the developing countries. Actually, if we see in our economy in countries, growth is a problem that developed countries face. On the other hand, development, complete development is a problem that developing countries face. Developing countries would mean those countries which are called the third world countries, countries like India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Bangladesh. We are all countries we need to still develop, and we are economically grown, but we need to be developed as well, which we are still lacking. So we are facing this problem of development. Next is growth includes less involvement of the government. Okay, that means, in other words, we can say that growth is actually something where government does not have to really interfere in between, right? But development is a concept where there has to be active involvement of the government. That means economic development demands involvement of the government. So basically, in the third world countries, like I said, the developing countries, government in these countries are expected to assume an active responsibility for promoting economic development. So in those countries which are still not developed, the government is more focused on development. So therefore, growth is something where government does not really need to involve much. So there is less involvement. But in development, there is active and complete involvement of the government. Now we are going to see a comparative study of the economies of India and China on the basis of a few indicators. Now when I just go through these statistics, you have to understand that I have not taken each and every data. Okay, for this I would suggest using this same heading that you are seeing right now, comparative study of Indian and Chinese economies on certain indicators. Using this heading, you can go through all the indicators on the internet and find the latest data of 2018 or 19 and 19 and 20. You can find latest data. I will just take a few examples over here. First, we are going to see what is the unemployment rate of India and China in the year 2020. So for India it is 24% and for China it's 4.3%. That means India needs to reduce unemployment and give more employment to its people. Next is size of the economy. Okay, so purchasing power parity in the year 2020 is, for India it is 11,321,280 million dollars, that is US dollars. Okay, whereas China 27,804,953 million dollars, which is a lot. So it's more than India. Okay, we need to still grow to that level. We need to still develop there. Next indicator is the GDP growth rate. In the year 2020, what is the GDP growth rate of India and China? So for India it is 1.2% and for China it's 2.3%, which means we still need to grow there. Okay. Next is poverty rate. Now poverty rate, according to the 2019 data samples, it is assumed that poverty in India was 17%. That means 17% of our population in India is still living in poverty. They are living below poverty line. And in China, it is assumed to be approximately 1.7% in the year 2018, which is very less. And we are still yet to develop in this area also. Next indicator is inflation rate. Now the inflation rate in India is 3.34% according to 2020 year data, and for China it is 3.05% again in the year 2020. So that means our inflation rate is a little more than China, and we still need to bring it a little down. Okay. Now these are a few examples, a few indicators. Students, I would really like to suggest that please go ahead, use the internet, browse there, surf it and find out more data, more samples of the recent years on more indicators, on more parameters. Try to find out what is the difference between Indian and Chinese economy. Alright students, I hope you all have understood, and I believe that you're going to follow this lesson and study well. All the best.